Welcome to the local campaign. Today's debate is for the residents of Ward 8, College Ward. There are 3 candidates who are running in the municipal election on October the 22nd. I'll introduce them to you in just a moment, but first, let me talk about the plan for the debate today. Each candidate will receive 1 minute to provide an opening statement. We drew the order for those opening statements at random just before our telecast. And then we'll move to a series of debates about the important topics in College Ward and throughout the city of Ottawa. For each debate section, I'll begin with a question directed at one of the candidates. That candidate will have 45 seconds to respond to the question on his or her own. Then we'll open it up to several minutes of debate amongst all the candidates. At the conclusion of that debate, we'll go back to the candidate to whom the question was originally addressed, and he or she will have 30 seconds to wrap up on that topic. We'll move through a number of different topics using that format, and then we'll have closing statements of 1 minute in length in the reverse order of the opening statements. So let's meet the candidates who are running for your vote in College Ward on October the 22nd. They are Ryan Kennery, Emilie Coyle, and Rick Chiarelli. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. Let's begin with the opening statements, and we'll start with Ryan Kennery. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
My fiancée Nicole and I are proud to have bought our first home in the Copeland Park, Bel Air neighborhood. We're putting down roots and plan to start our family in this incredible area. I'm running because I care about the kind of community we're going to leave for future generations. I've knocked on more than 12,000 doors since the campaign began in the spring, working hard to earn every vote. And I've also done some listening to folks who have felt as though they haven't been heard in years past. Here's what I heard. We need a fresh perspective to address the challenges we face as a community. We need to do better on road safety and speeding in our neighborhoods. We also need to take action on the quality of our roads and the reliability of OC Transpo. I'm offering a more collaborative approach and much needed new energy to help deliver on this promise. I also have the City Hall experience we need to get results for our community. I want to thank Rogers TV for hosting, and I'm looking forward to a good exchange of ideas with my fellow candidates. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is Emilie Coyle. You have 1 minute as well.
Thank you very much, Mark. I know that there is a better way for the people of College Ward. I am now the 3rd generation of my family to call College Ward home, and I'm raising the 4th generation. I have listened to thousands of people in College Ward at their doors, and here's what they're telling me. They're telling me their voices are not being heard. They're telling me their concerns are not being met. They're telling me their issues are not being addressed. And most importantly, they're telling me that they have lost trust in the city's decision makers. I will restore that trust. I will work with the citizens of College Ward, young and the not so young anymore, to ensure that all of their voices are heard when it comes to the decisions that we make. For example, road safety is a big issue. We will work on that. Opening up the city budget process is another example. I look forward to telling you more about how I will do that today. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Finally, Rick Chiarelli, you have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Thank you, Mark. I represent the best ward in the city, and I'm proud of what we have done and how we've built it together. I want to continue to work with you to make the city and our ward the best place to live. The council you will be electing will contain many new and inexperienced members. My experience will be a huge asset. I'm the councillor who stands up for College Ward. I'm an independent thinker. I don't always toe the line. When the city budget ignored what was needed to maintain our roads and infrastructure and police, I spoke up. When in summer of 2016, the city tried to cut the snow plowing budget so that plows wouldn't hit the streets until 10 centimeters had fallen, I spoke up. Oversight and debate is important in any democracy. It's our sworn duty. I take it very seriously.
All right, thank you. Thank you to all the candidates. Let's get into some of the debates about the important topics now, and I'll begin with a question to Ryan Kennery. Some people would argue that tax increases of 2%, which is what we've seen over the past 4 years, have put too much pressure on the city's services. Would you support increasing taxes by a higher amount to pay for more services and make more investments in infrastructure, or would you like to see tax increases even lower than what we've seen recently?
Two principles I have on this. I know that no one wants to pay more in taxes. We already pay a lot in taxes, but we also understand that we're a growing city. We have things to pay for. I also like the fact that there has been a predictable tax cap in the last number of years. But for me, the budget conversation is broader than that. I'm also looking at the size of our debt, the quality of our roads, the reliability of our services. I think we need to have a more holistic conversation about what that looks like. I don't know if that's the tax cap at the continued level, but or it's a matter of having other levels of government pay as well. But I'm hoping to bring a more collaborative approach to the budget process in general, because the last 8 years, I think we're about bringing fiscal discipline to the city. The next 4 years, I think, need to be about renewing some of our assets.
Okay, it's open to all of you on this subject now.
Well, I think we can all agree on the subject of taxes and the subject of the city budget that there are a lot of people in the city who don't understand what's going on, and it's really incumbent upon City Council and the Mayor to ensure that we have transparency around how we're spending the money that we have. This is the hard-earned dollars of people in College Ward, and they want to make sure that we are spending it wisely. And when we talk about a 2% tax cap, we have to ensure that that is paying for all of the services that we need, for the infrastructure renewal that we need, for the transit that we need. And if we don't have clarity around where we are spending on our budget, then we're never going to get those answers. So I would push to ensure that we open up the budget process so everybody understands what's going on with their hard-earned money. I want to know that. I'm sure everybody else does too.
Okay, I'm the only one here with experience working under people like former Nepean Mayor Ben Franklin, who shepherded through and ran the pay-as-you-go policy in Nepean for years. And that policy taught me something very important, and that is the only way to lower taxes and stable taxes in the long term and even in the middle term is by putting enough money into maintenance, roads, and infrastructure and core services. You have to start there, get that right, and then move from there. In Nepean, we used to get mocked by some for spending so much on maintenance and roads and infrastructure. But what that did is it made sure we didn't have to spend for huge reconstruction projects for, instead of paving the parking lot of a major arena 1 year and saving money, you end up having to reconstruct it the next year. The thing is, if your roof is leaking, you can pretend you're saving money by not fixing it. But you're not saving money because the roof will have to be replaced because you didn't do the simple maintenance. The key to maintaining low taxes and lowering taxes is to put money into basic infrastructure and maintenance.
I think we need to talk a little bit about experience. So what I'm hearing at the doors is that the experience that we have with the current City Council is not giving us the answers that we need. If you want to talk about experience, I am the candidate here who has real world experience. I have managed huge teams. I've managed multi-million-dollar budgets. I know what it's like to look at a budget and ask where efficiency is going to be made on a certain line item. And we are no longer in the city of Nepean. We have moved to the city of Ottawa. And it is incumbent upon us as councillors to understand the city budget and to break that open for the people that we represent. Experience is great, but we need real world experience so that we're not playing the same old politics.
Well, somebody, when the budget came out this year and the budget showed that we would spend $70 million less than we needed to spend on roads and infrastructure than we needed to spend just to stay where we were, I was a guy who spoke up. I was a guy who forced that issue, and I believe it's going to lead to a better turnout at next budget.
All right. Ryan Kennery, I asked you the question, so you get the last 30 seconds.
I think we can all agree that our roads have been a little bumpier these days, and I think we need to do a lot better when it comes to core services. But Mr. Chiarelli can't have it both ways. You can't lower taxes as well as reduce the debt as well as invest in infrastructure. It's got to come from somewhere. So back in this past budget cycle, I was one of 13 people at a budget consultation session. 13 people for our ward of about 40,000 voters. So I think we need to do better on community engagement and better to make sure that people see the value for their tax dollars.
All right, thank you. Let's move to the next question, which I'll direct to Emilie Coyle. I want to talk about light rail. It's still not up and running in Ottawa. It won't be until after the election. There is a chance the city may incur additional costs associated with some of the delays in light rail. There's a $1 million penalty that we thought was going to apply if the original deadline was missed. It turns out it doesn't. Do you feel the city has handled the management of the project properly, or has there been a failure in oversight?
I think this is another example of why we need change at City Hall. Everybody has questions about the first phase of the LRT. You know, why are we not imposing this penalty? Who's going to pay for it? It's extremely important as we move forward into phase 2 and possibly phase 3 of the LRT that we are crossing all of our T's and dotting all of our I's when it comes to making sure that we are on time, without delays, and on budget. We had an on budget, on deadline project that went completely off the rails, no pun intended. And we need to bring it back because people want transit options. I'm hearing that at every door I go to. We need better transit. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we are on top of the budget and on top of the deadlines.
Okay, it's open to all of you on this subject now.
It's absolutely true that we have to conduct oversight over light rail. That's why I submitted an access to information request for one of the very few times in my career to get to the bottom of the light rail land purchases. There were over 74 properties expropriated by the city to create light rail phase 1. And yet council, not only was the public not allowed to see the details, the financial details and other details of those purchases or who the vendors were, but City Council wasn't allowed to see them either. So I took this to the Access Commissioner. I filed a request for access so we could make these public and end the secrecy. And to this point, the fight continues because at City Hall, that is a state secret. And if you want to talk about transparency at City Hall right now, if you want to know who a member of council had coffee with and how much the coffee costs, you can get that. But if you want to know where $250 million went on land purchases, you can't see that.
I'm appalled. I find that disgusting, and I think that we really need to work on that. And I think we need to have a better system than having to file an access to information request. Why? Because people of this city, we pay, you know, our revenue from our taxes, 50% of it comes from the people of the city of Ottawa. We need to have clarity around huge projects like the LRT, where most of our money is going these days. And frankly, you need someone who's going to stand up and who's going to change the system from within so that we don't have to have access to information requests, which are allowing us to have the information. And also, I think it's important that the city councillor walk the residents of each ward, the ward that they represent, through the process so that they can understand, not right before election time, but they can understand what's happening throughout. And you can have a website, you can have newsletters, you can do a multitude of things to allow people to
I just want to jump here.
wasn't
I definitely share Ms. Coyle's views on this. There's lots of great lessons learned from stage 1 of LRT. I worked at City Hall during phase 1, and I watched Hinchinburg residents fight to ensure there was good traffic mitigation, good construction mitigation. Saw that City Council added more bus service, so there was a reduction in the loss of riders during that. You know, there's going to be a big change coming to our area in the next few years. We need a city councilor who will go above and beyond in the communications realm to make sure that you're informed about what's happening in your neighborhood. You know, if you go on your councilor's website and there's no information about the consultations that are available to you, what the plan's going to look like, if everything is a few years old, you're not going to have the ability to affect change in your area. This is going to be a tremendous game changer for our area. We want to make sure that we get our fair share for when it comes to communications as well as the project in general.
The move to try to get the secrecy ended on light rail land purchases did not start right before the election. It started almost 4 years ago.
The communication started right before the election. That's all we have to say about that.
Our fellow councillor, Diane Deans, moved motions that
I
we're
think
trying
it's
to
my
reject.
turn now. Yeah, it's my turn
So
now.
the last 30 seconds go to you, Emilie Coyle.
Thank you very much. What I'm talking about is communication around what's happening at City Hall. There are very easy fixes to that. You can have a website that is updated, that is current. You can have newsletters that go out twice a year, physical newsletters. We have someone in my ward who told me that she needs to go to the ward next door to advertise in their newsletter because we don't actually have one in College Ward. And, you know, it is incumbent upon the councillor to make sure that communication happens all the time.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next question, which I'll direct to Rick Chiarelli. You've talked about your experience, but you've also been in municipal government for 20 years. How long is too long? Would you support term limits in city government? And are there any other changes that you would make to how city councils function or how they are elected?
Well, first of all, I think on any council, it's good to have some new members and it's good to have experience. It's like any other organization or business out there. You want some of each. You would never want to have, you would never go to a business and try to sign them on to help you, say, rebuild your house if no one's ever done it before. You want a mix of experience and new people. As far as term limits go, first of all, we don't have the authority to make that decision. That's a provincial decision, if at all. But secondly, I think the public decides the term limit. It isn't the calendar. So there are people who deserve to have their terms limited after one term. And there are others, like Ben Franklin.
That's time, but you can keep going if you want because it's open to everyone.
I have a lot to say on this particular topic,
okay,
sir.
But there are others, like for instance, Ben Franklin, who didn't even get into doing the pay-as-you-go system until his third term. So I don't see any magic in the calendar. I see magic in the voters.
I think that what we need to ensure at City Council is that we have people who actually have experience working in the real world. So I have worked now for 20 years in professional capacity, as I've said before, managing big teams, multi-million-dollar budgets. I've owned my own business. When I was 35, I went back to school with 2 small children at home so I could get a law degree. All of these tools I will bring to use for the people of College Ward. And the reason I say that is because we need to have a fresh perspective. We need to have new leadership who will be creative, who starts out with, yes, I will work on that issue with you. Not, no, I'm sorry, that's a failed intersection at Glenmount and Maitland where people are getting hurt on a regular basis. And in terms, for one moment,
Sure.
in terms of term limits, I would put myself, and I've said this at the doors, on a self-imposed term limit of 2. Why? Because I think we need to have succession planning. If you want to talk about a good organization has succession planning. And what that means is if you are working on projects, you can bring those projects to fruition as you transition into the next person who takes that over. If you don't have the certainty around that, then we're going to be left, unfortunately, with some perhaps indecision around issues that have been brought forward in College Ward. And I think it's extremely important.
Absolutely.
That
The
we
theme
work on that
Emilie
together.
is picking up on here, I think the fact is the longer a politician is around, the more complacent they become. They stop answering your phone calls. They stop giving you the benefit of the doubt. They stop going above and beyond. They delay decisions to the next term and the next term and the next term, and they don't deliver real results for you. So I'm with Emilie on that, and I would definitely follow in the footsteps of Steve Duresh and Mark Taylor and impose a two-term limit on myself as well. Because I think it's important that we have a deadline. We have a councillor who has the energy and the sense of urgency to deliver on commitments to actually get things done. We can't afford to wait
And you would agree that we need real-world experience as well.
There is urgency and there is experience. And when I took over Bell's Corners, just 6 years ago, there were 29 boarded up storefronts in Bell's Corners, terrible intersections, no, Nortel was leaving, there was no anchor employer. And I worked with the BIA and made good on a promise, by me and the mayor, by the way.
And now we have a KFC.
To have,
it's very exciting for Bell's Corners. I think we need to do more for people.
There's a heck of a lot more, and
No,
you know
listen,
it.
with
We
all due
instituted
respect,
what's
sir,
become
for the time
most
that you've put in
successful
at City
community
Council.
improvement
You're going to
plan.
get the last 30 seconds in a moment.
With
So
all due respect, sir, for the time that you've put in at City Council, and I do have a lot of respect for the time that you've put in and the work that you have done, I actually think it is now time for you to step aside and to allow someone with a different skill set and real-world experience to come in and take over with a fresh energy. I really do.
Okay, it's my turn now?
sure.
Okay, good. Okay. I've used my experience very well. If you look at Bell's Corners, we started with 29 boarded up storefronts, terrible intersections, no anchor employer, and very bad transit. And the community challenged us to fix that. Today, with the help of John Baird, we have D&D moving into the old Nortel headquarters. That's a third completed already. We have the most successful community improvement plan in the city that's brought in 5 new applications for storefronts.
All right, that's time.
And
Thank you. We'll have to stop there. We'll move to the next question now, which I will direct to Ryan Kennery. What can be done to address the issue of rising gun violence in Ottawa? You've got 45 seconds to start us off on that topic.
It's unfortunate that while the overall crime rate is decreasing, we're still seeing too much gun violence on our streets. And for any one of us to say to you that it's a quick and easy fix, it simply isn't true. You know, I've been in those meetings with the chief of police. I've been in those briefings. And the problem we face is that there's more guns on the street and that people are being quicker to use them. I'm supportive of adding more police officers. I'm supportive of ensuring that we look at the police budget outside of a 2% or otherwise cap. But I'm also cognizant of the fact of we need to do the work at the community level to make sure the community agencies who have after-school programs and anti-gun programs have the support they need to do better, because we've been marginalizing people for far too long.
Okay, it's open to all of you on this topic now.
Great, thank you very much. So there are some really concrete things that you can do around gun violence. And I actually had a long conversation with one of the city staff who works on violence and crime prevention. And one of the things that we talked about was whether or not it is gang related, you know, all those things aside, what we really need to do is to be supporting the community efforts. And I will tell you a very quick story. I was on the streets the other day in Bell's Corners, where they had, unfortunately, some very tragic events happening. And I can tell you that I spoke with a man who wanted to organize the neighborhood watch, and he was looking for support. That is the first thing that the councillor should be doing, listening to people about what is important to them, especially when it comes to crime.
I don't know where you were. I don't know where you were because.
Sorry, just one second. Because they are the most important people to listen to.
You can't just continue with a fiction here.
Also, it's important that we organize ward-level meetings about crime, and we invite people from the community to those meetings. We need to invite a crime prevention ambassador to the ward who will talk to the community about the ways that we can work. And finally, I want to mention this. It's important that we monitor the progress of the new Ottawa Police Services Community Equity Council, which is launching this fall, to ensure that we strengthen relationships between Ottawa Police Services and the Indigenous, racialized, and faith-based communities and organizations in this city, because we do not want to conflate gun violence or crime in any way with these populations.
So late this winter, when we had the 2 shootings and the vehicular homicide in Bell's Corners, I moved really quickly with our MPP, Lisa MacLeod, and we called together the entire community to talk about what we could do in a positive way to help prevent this from happening again. We made a commitment to help establish neighborhood watches with the community. To this day, we have 6 up and running neighborhood watches that came out of that. We have also 13 others that are in the works right now.
Neighborhood watch is fine,
so
but we need something a little bit more than that.
Neighborhood watches are important and they work. Secondly, it was clear to me that the guns and gang strategy didn't work. So I had meetings with the police chief, and he actually agreed to make changes to the strategy. You can't convince an 18-year-old guy who's out there selling drugs for $500 a day that instead he should take on a $14 an hour job at McDonald's. He won't do it. You need to bring in a strategy that's going to take these young people mainly and get them into something that's more productive so they become passionate and obsessed with that.
I completely agree with you, which is why I've already launched a youth advisory council strategy in the ward, which is something that we need to be working on. We need to consistently be working with youth, but not just putting crime and guns on the backs of youth. That is not going to solve the problem.
No, but this is
I totally agree with you that neighborhood watches are extremely important.
It's a gun and gang problem.
You cannot just create them, you then have to support them. You need to help walk them through what it is to work in their community.
But, you know, part of this
it takes more
is
than
increasing
Okay, that's time. Ryan Kennery, I asked you the question. You get the last 30 seconds.
No, I attended the meeting in Bell's Corners that Councillor Chiarelli is referring to, and it was a really great show of support and community in Bell's Corners. Bell's Corners is an incredible neighborhood. Such a resilient community, but I know that the hard work is only starting. Getting these systems set up, whether they're committees or neighborhood watch, that's only the start of the solution. You know, we need someone who's going to go above and beyond to bring people to the table to address a lot of the systemic issues that we're facing. It's not a matter of more police officers, but it's a matter of making sure we also have better relationships at the community level.
All right, thank you. We are going to move now to the closing statements to wrap up our debate for College Ward. And we'll do those in the reverse order of the opening statements. So we will start with Rick Chiarelli. You have 60 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you. I've been your representative for a long time, and I've gained a great deal of experience. That experience is going to help on a council that is going to have a huge number of new members. It's important that we look at our priorities. If we're looking at our quality of life, it begins with our roads and infrastructure. We need to dedicate more resources up front in the budget to roads and infrastructure so that we can, first of all, have better roads to drive on and better infrastructure to use, but also so that we're not forced to reconstruct these things at significantly higher costs. That is the biggest cost driver in taxation. So if you want lower taxes, you must get control of that. You have to fix the leaky roof, not try to save money by not fixing it and let the roof collapse. Secondly, Bell's Corners has, coming up, some very large residential expansion.
Okay, that's time. Thank you. We'll move now to Emilie Coyle. You have a minute as well.
I really want to thank you again, Mark, for allowing me this opportunity to share some of my vision for College Ward. I haven't gotten to all of the ways that I think we can do better, but you may have heard that I think we need, safer streets, safer community. I also know that we need to ensure that people in College Ward feel like their voices are heard and that their voices matter when it comes to the decisions that we're making at City Hall. And it's also a place where people have a say in how their tax dollars are spent. And I just want to say this. On October 22nd, voters are going to have a very clear choice between old representation and an old way of doing politics, or fresh perspective, new leadership with great energy to get things done for you. Someone who has real-world experience. And if you haven't filled out my survey yet, please go to emiliecoyle.ca. I want to hear what's important to you.
Thank you. Finally, Ryan Kennery, you have a minute as well.
There's some exciting changes coming to our area in the next couple of years. Light rail transit, younger families moving in, new businesses. It's more important than ever that we have a councillor that will go above and beyond to keep you informed and engaged. To do this, we need new energy. I'm offering this fresh perspective, along with a commitment to put the needs of you and your family first. I started my career in municipal government, and I could not be more proud of that. I've been involved in projects with nearly every city department. I'm also a senior manager at a small business. I'll be ready on day one to fight for our fair share. If I haven't reached you at the doorstep in my last 12,000 doors, I look forward to speaking to you as I knock on the next 20,000. You can also call me at 613-455-0183 or visit my website at kennery.ca. On October 22nd, I hope I can count on your support as your next city councillor. Thank you.
Thank you to all three of you for participating in this debate today. We appreciate it, and good luck the rest of the campaign. And thank you for watching. I want to remind you that Election Day is October the 22nd. That's when you can vote if you're a resident of College Ward or any other ward in the city. We will have live coverage of the results on the night of October 22nd right here on Rogers TV, and also simulcast on 1310 News Radio. Hope you can join us then. Thanks for watching.